I still remember the exact morning everything started to feel wrong. Not dramatic, not sudden, just wrong like a quiet shift in the air. I woke up in our apartment to the smell of burnt toast and the faint sound of my husband, Daniel, talking on the phone in the kitchen. His voice was low, tense, almost annoyed. I couldn't hear who he was speaking to, only the tone. Sharp, defensive, whispering something like, "Yeah, she's been acting strange lately. I'm handling it." My heart tightened. She, acting strange. He could only be talking about me. I sat up slowly, rubbing my face, trying to push away the heaviness from last night. We had a small argument, nothing big. I asked him why he'd come home late 3 days in a row. He snapped, saying I was imagining things. Then he slept facing the opposite side of the bed. But what unsettled me most was not the argument. It was that it felt practiced. Rehearsed. Like he'd been waiting for me to question him. When I entered the kitchen, he froze for half a second, that tiny flinch people do when they're caught doing something they shouldn't. Then he covered it with a smile. "Oh, hey, babe." His voice too sweet. Too soft. "Who were you talking to?" I asked casually. He shrugged. "My sister." I nodded slowly, but something in my gut whispered, "Lieth." He placed a plate of burnt toast in front of me, kissed my forehead and said, "You should eat, you look exhausted." That bothered me. Because I wasn't exhausted. I had slept fine. But Daniel had been pointing out small things about me lately, things that made me question myself. "You're forgetful lately. You're stressed. You're overreacting. You're imagining things. You're emotional." Little comments. Nothing big. But today they felt heavier. When he left for work, I sat alone at the table, staring at the toast until it burned my throat to swallow. I didn't know then that this was the beginning of something much darker, something carefully crafted. That afternoon, I received a message from my coworker, Jenna. "Hey, is everything okay between you and Daniel?" My stomach dropped. "Why?" I typed back. She replied almost instantly. "He told us you've been dealing with emotional instability." I didn't want to pry, but it sounded serious. Emotional instability. The words felt like ice pressed to my skin. My hands shook as I typed back, "I'm fine, why would he say that?" A minute later, "I don't know, girl. He said you've been paranoid lately, accusing him of things. Maybe he didn't mean it in a bad way." Paranoid. Accusing. My breath caught. I hadn't accused him of anything. I simply asked why he was coming home late. And he told people I was unstable. I dropped my phone. Something was happening behind my back, something Daniel didn't want me to see. When he returned home in the evening, he acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed me softly, made dinner, smiled too brightly, like he was playing a role. I watched him move around the kitchen, measured, controlled, overly gentle. He laughed at jokes I didn't make. He touched my shoulder for no reason. He kept asking, "You okay? You look off." Off. Another word. Another seed planted. I didn't respond, I simply watched him. Because behind his smile, I noticed something else. Fear. Not of me, but of me finding something out. Something he was hiding carefully. Later that night, around 11 p.m., I walked past his office and heard him whispering again. I leaned closer. "She confronted me again," he said softly. A pause. "No, she doesn't suspect anything." Another pause. "Yes, I'm keeping records, don't worry." Records. My pulse quickened. Keeping records of what? My hand trembled against the wall. And then I heard the most chilling thing. "Everyone already believes she's unstable. It won't be hard." The room spun for a moment. Everyone believes. He wasn't just telling coworkers. He wasn't just telling family. He was building something. A case. A narrative. A version of me that didn't exist. My throat tightened as I stumbled back to the bedroom. Was he preparing to leave me? Take the house. Take everything. No, it felt bigger than that. Darker than that. Because he wasn't just lying behind my back. He was shaping a version of me that couldn't defend itself. A woman no one would believe. A woman he could easily destroy. I sat on the bed, shaking uncontrollably, trying to understand what I had done wrong, why the man who once protected me was now rewriting me like a story he wanted to erase. I stayed awake all night. By sunrise, one thing was clear. Daniel wasn't trying to hurt me. He was trying to break me. And the worst part, I still didn't know why. But I knew this. Before this ended, before he finished whatever he was planning, I would find the truth, even if it destroyed everything. The next morning I woke up with a tightness in my chest, the kind that tells you something terrible is waiting for you, even before you open your eyes. Daniel wasn't in bed. His side was cold. That alone made my stomach sink. I followed the sound of murmured voices into the living room. He wasn't alone. His mother was sitting on the couch. Teresa. Of course. The one person who never knocked. The one person who always made me feel like a stranger in my own home. The one person who believed she owned Daniel and everything that came with him. Her face lit up when she saw me, but not with warmth. With victory. Like she'd been waiting. Good morning, dear, she said sweetly, too sweetly. Daniel told me everything. My muscles stiffened. Everything. What everything? Daniel turned toward me, his expression carefully blank, almost rehearsed. Mom was worried, he said quietly. I thought it was better to talk things out. Talk what out? I asked. Teresa clasped her hands together dramatically, the way she always did when she wanted to appear innocent. Sweetheart, we're just concerned. Daniel said you've been having episodes. My mouth fell open. Episodes. Daniel didn't look at me, he stared at the floor. Teresa sighed deeply, as if my existence exhausted her. You accused him of cheating because he came home late after work. You've been waking up suddenly in the night, startled. You've been forgetting things. My breath caught. I haven't forgotten anything. She gave me a pitying look, the kind that cuts deeper than any insult. It happens, dear. Women your age stress, hormones, maybe depression. My hands trembled. I'm not depressed, I'm not unstable. Daniel is lying. Teresa gasped softly, as if I had slapped her. See, she whispered to him, she's becoming aggressive now. Aggressive? I had barely raised my voice. Daniel rubbed his face. Mom, not now. But she continued, her voice lowering into a careful, calculated softness. Maybe you should talk to someone, dear, a therapist. Maybe even consider medication. My heart stopped for a moment. This was no misunderstanding. This was a setup. Because I knew exactly what this was now. If enough people believe you're unstable, if your husband supports it, if your mother-in-law confirms it, then anything they do afterward looks justified. I took a slow, shaking breath. Get out, I whispered. Teresa raised an eyebrow. Excuse me. You heard me. Leave my house. Daniel finally looked up, shocked. Maria, stop, she's worried. No, I cut him off sharply. She's not worried, she's playing a part, and you brought her here to make me look unhinged. He blinked rapidly, guilt flashing for a second before he buried it. Teresa stood slowly. I'll leave, but only because I can see she's not well. She walked to the door and placed a hand on Daniel's arm. Call me later, honey. We need to discuss next steps. Next steps? What next steps? Before I could say anything, she slipped out with a satisfied smile. I turned to Daniel, fury and hurt rising like a storm inside me. You told her I was unstable. He backed away slightly. I didn't use that word. But you implied it. He didn't respond. I stepped closer, Why are you doing this? What are you trying to prove? He exhaled slowly, a practiced sigh of frustration. You're overreacting again. There it was again. That word. Overreacting. A convenient way to silence someone. Daniel, I said, voice trembling, we had a small argument. You came home late. I asked you why. That's not an episode. That's not paranoia. That's communication. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm tired, Maria. You question everything I do lately. Because you hide everything you do lately. Silence. Long. Uncomfortable. Suffocating. Finally, he said quietly, I think you need help. Something inside me shattered. Because that sentence, that exact sentence, was the beginning of the destruction of so many women on those channels you showed me. Before the forged documents, before the eviction, before the police, before the manipulation, before the twist. It always starts with, you need help. Not them. Not their lies. Not their secrets. You. I stepped back, staring at him, really staring. This man, my husband, the man I loved, the man I trusted, was slowly painting a version of me that wasn't real. And I didn't know why. Not yet. The rest of the day passed in tense silence. He went about his routine like nothing happened. He made coffee, worked on his laptop, hummed to music, but everything he did felt performative, like he wanted me to see how calm and normal he was. As if to contrast me. As if he was building a case. By nightfall, my chest ached with anxiety. I went to bed early, unable to take his artificial calmness anymore. But around midnight, I woke to the faint sound of movement. Whispering. Footsteps. I sat up quietly and tiptoed down the hall toward his office. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, Daniel was on the phone again, voice hushed, tone urgent. I think she's getting worse, he whispered. A pause. Yes, I'll document today's incident too. Another pause. No, don't tell her yet, she'll find out soon enough. My skin prickled. Document today's incident. What incident? Telling his mother to leave. Defending myself. And then I heard something worse than everything else combined. Yes, she thinks I'm the problem, which is perfect. 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 My knees weakened. Perfect for what? I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from making a sound. I backed away slowly, heart racing, breath tight, body trembling. When I finally reached the bedroom, tears filled my eyes. Whatever he was planning, he had already started. And I was running out of time. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his whisper again. Which is perfect? Perfect. For what? Divorce. Custody. Making me look unstable. Taking the house. Or something even darker. By sunrise, my mind felt raw, like every nerve was exposed. Daniel acted normal the next morning, too normal. He hummed while making coffee again, texted someone with a slight smile, kissed my forehead like he always did when he needed me calm. That kiss felt like manipulation now, not love. Are you feeling better? He asked lightly. I stared at him. Better from what? He gave a tiny sigh, as if exhausted by my existence. Maria, your mood swings. Yesterday was intense. Intense? Yesterday I told his mother to leave my house. That's not intense, that's boundaries. He continued making breakfast, pretending not to notice I was shaking. Maybe journal your emotions today, he said casually, as if giving me self-care advice. But I heard what he really meant. Document more unstable behavior. More evidence. More ammunition. He wasn't trying to help me. He was building a case. Against me. After he left for work, I sat in silence on the couch, staring at the door. Everything in me screamed that something was terribly wrong. My instinct said, follow him. So I did. I waited 10 minutes, grabbed my keys and left quietly. I drove behind him at a distance, far enough he wouldn't notice, but close enough that I could see his car. He didn't go to work. My stomach tightened. He pulled into a quiet neighborhood and parked in front of a house I didn't recognize, a light yellow house with a white porch and neatly cut grass. And then, a woman stepped outside. Not a stranger. His sister, Emily. They hugged, talked quietly on the porch. Daniel looked stressed. Emily nodded slowly like she was reassuring him. I stayed hidden in my car, heart pounding, palms sweating. I rolled the window down slightly, trying to hear, but the distance was too far. Finally, Daniel handed her a stack of papers. My throat tightened. Papers, documents. Emily flipped through them, nodding. Then she hugged him again, rubbing his back exactly the way someone comforts a grieving child. Grieving. Or guilty. Daniel got back into his car and drove off. Emily disappeared into the house with the papers. I didn't move, I couldn't. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they went numb. What documents? What did she need them for? Why involve his sister? I waited until I could breathe again, then drove home, every thought in my head running sharp and fast. By late afternoon, I finally gathered enough courage to enter his office. If he was keeping records, evidence, documents, they had to be in here. The moment I stepped inside, fear gripped my chest. The air felt heavier, stale, like secrets were sitting on the shelves waiting to be uncovered. I opened the first drawer. Bills. Normal stuff. Second drawer. Folders labeled with months, too neat, too organized. Daniel wasn't organized like this. Then the third drawer. Locked. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. Why lock only one drawer? I knew better than to try breaking it open. He would notice immediately. Instead, I scanned the rest of the office. On the bookshelf near the corner, I found something strange. A small notebook. Black cover. No title. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside were dates. Descriptions. Paragraphs. About me. Nov 2, Maria cried because I came home late, emotional instability increasing. Nov 6 accused me of lying, paranoia episode. Nov 10 raised her voice, recorded incident. Nov 11 forgot where she placed keys, cognitive confusion. I dropped the notebook. My knees nearly gave out. This wasn't normal. This wasn't frustration. This wasn't venting. He was documenting me. Every emotion. Every sentence. Every disagreement. Twisted. Manipulated. Rewritten. Weaponized. He wasn't making a case. He was building a profile. Of someone mentally unstable. Someone dangerous. Someone who couldn't be trusted with herself. Someone who couldn't be trusted with a child. Except we didn't have a child. We had talked about it, argued about it, postponed it, but we didn't have one. So why was he building a case like this? Unless he needed to prove that when we did have a child, I wouldn't be fit to raise them. My breath vanished. My chest tightened painfully. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. Finally, the truth began to show its teeth. He wasn't trying to break our marriage. He was trying to break me. The front door slammed. I jumped. Maria, Daniel called. I'm home. My heart raced. He couldn't see the notebook. He couldn't know I knew. I shoved it back exactly where it was, arranging everything perfectly. I inhaled once, twice, 3 times, forcing my shaking body to calm. Then I walked out of the office, wiping my tears, masking my fear, pretending everything was normal, just like he did every day. He smiled when he saw me. Hey, he said softly, you look pale, are you okay? I stared at him, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not my husband. Not my partner. Not someone who loved me. A stranger. A planet. A liar. A danger. But I forced a smile, a steady, perfect, controlled smile. Yes, I said quietly, I'm okay. Because now that I knew what he was doing, I had to stay quiet. I had to stay calm. I had to stay smart. Because he wasn't the only one who could play this game. The next morning felt heavier than all the days before. You know that feeling when the house is too quiet? When the air feels thick? When silence isn't peaceful, it's warning you. That was my morning. Daniel made breakfast again, too cheerful, too attentive, too controlled. Like a man who needed everything to look normal on the surface. He placed a plate in front of me. You should eat, he said softly. You didn't eat much yesterday. My stomach twisted. Yesterday, I had discovered a secret notebook where he documented my every move. He didn't know I knew, and I needed to keep it that way. So I forced a small smile. Thanks. His eyes searched my face, trying to read me. Are you feeling better today? He asked. Better? That word again. A word designed to box me into a diagnosis that never existed. Yeah, I lied. I think I just needed sleep. He relaxed. Just a little. But I saw relief flicker in his eyes. Relief that I wasn't questioning him today. Relief that the mask was still working. Relief that his plan was still on track. After breakfast, he left for work again. Of course, I didn't believe that for a second. Yesterday, he hadn't gone to work. He met his sister to give her documents. So today, I followed him again. But halfway to his office, he made a sudden turn into a side street I didn't expect. Then another. And another. My heart pounded. Was he checking if he was being followed? He drove in circles through different neighborhoods, pausing at stop signs longer than necessary, looking at his mirrors. Shit. He suspected something. I quickly turned onto another road and kept my distance. Eventually, he pulled into a pharmacy parking lot and stayed inside the car for a full 2 minutes, texting. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. He wasn't talking. He was listening. The whole time. Then, after a long moment, he nodded to himself and drove off again. I didn't follow this time. Something about that call felt planned. Like someone was giving him instructions. Or updates. Or approvals. Who is? His sister. His mother. A lawyer. The possibilities twisted my stomach. When I got home, I went to the one place I knew held the truth. His locked drawer. I stared at it for a long time, heart-pounding, thinking. He would notice if I broke it. He would notice if I scratched it. He would notice if anything was out of place. But then I remembered something. Months ago, Daniel had left his keys in his gym bag. He didn't like carrying too many keys, so he kept duplicates in different places, just in case. There might still be one in his old backpack in the closet. I checked. I dug through it carefully, quietly. Gum wrapper. A broken pen. Old receipts. Headphones. And then a tiny silver key. My heart jumped. I held my breath, took the key to the office and slid it into the drawer lock. Click. It opened. Inside was a neat pile of folders, each labelled in his precise handwriting. Evidence Maria. My blood went cold. Hands shaking, I opened the first folder. Inside were photos. Photos of me. Sleeping. Crying. Looking away. Rubbing my forehead. Staring out the window. Pictures taken without me knowing. Angled. Secret. Creepy. I flipped to the next folder. Printouts of texts between us, cut and pasted out of context. Dates highlighted. Arguments summarized in bullet points. Another folder. Behavioral patterns, emotional instability. It listed mood swings, paranoia, forgetfulness, irritability, possible delusions. He had written notes beside each one, describing incidents. All lies, all twisted, all staged. He was creating a psychological profile of me. My lungs tightened painfully. What was this for? Who was he giving this to? Why was he building a case like this? I flipped to the last folder, labeled simply, petition. Petition. A wave of nausea hit me. Inside were legal forms. Custody petition. Emergency mental health evaluation request. House occupancy transfer. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. He had filled everything out. All he needed was signatures. 2 signatures. His, a witness or secondary family member. His sister. His mother. Anyone. And there on page 3. My names. Already printed in the space where the unstable spouse goes. Not handwritten. Printed. Because he never intended to ask me. He planned to file it against me. He wanted temporary custody. He wanted me hospitalized. He wanted me removed from the home. He wanted the house in his name. He wanted full control of my life. And now I finally understood the darkest part. Why he kept saying perfect. Why he documented everything. Why he manipulated every moment. Why he told people I was unstable. Why he involved his sister. Why his mother repeated the same lies. He was preparing to legally erase me. Not from the marriage. From reality. He wanted the world to believe that I was mentally unwell. So he could justify anything he did afterward. Including taking everything I had. Including locking me in a facility. Including destroying my reputation. Including ruining my future. I stumbled back from the drawer, clutching my chest as I tried to breathe. This wasn't manipulation. This wasn't gaslighting. This wasn't cruelty. This was premeditated character assassination. A plan months in the making. A plan designed to break me so quietly people would think it was just me falling apart. But I wasn't falling apart. I was waking up. And now that I knew the truth, there was no going back. I put everything back exactly where it was, locked the drawer, wiped my tears and stood in the middle of the office, trembling, shaking, but finally seeing clearly. He wanted a war. He wanted me helpless. He wanted me trapped. But he didn't realize one thing. A woman who knows the truth is a woman who becomes unstoppable. And if he thought he could destroy me quietly, he was about to learn. I don't break. I don't fall. I don't disappear. Not for him. Not for anyone. I don't remember how long I stood in that office. Minutes. Hours. Time didn't feel real anymore. All I knew was this. I couldn't let him know I had seen the files. Not yet. The moment he suspected I knew the truth, he would accelerate everything. Hospitalization. Police report. False testimony. Character assassination. He was prepared. Trained. Organized. And I had just stepped into his battlefield. But I wasn't going to lose. Not quietly. Not gently. Not the way he planned. That evening, Daniel came home with grocery bags in his hands and a soft smile on his face. The same manipulative smile that once made me feel safe. Now it felt like a mask. A cheap plastic mask hiding a monster underneath. I bought your favorite, he said cheerfully, pasta with creamy garlic sauce. I forced a smile. Thanks. But inside me, my pulse raced. My skin crawled. My throat tightened. He was pretending everything was normal. Because he needed me calm. Predictable. Blind. We sat at the table. He served my plate. He kept watching me. Not lovingly. Evaluating. Did you do anything fun today? He asked carelessly. Fun? I almost laughed. I spent the day finding out my husband was building a legal case to destroy my life. Fun? No, just chores, I answered. He nodded. Satisfied. Believing the lies. But then something happened that made my blood run cold. Halfway through dinner, he said casually, I talked to Emily today. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Oh, I asked. Yeah, she agrees with me. My heart thundered so loudly I wondered if he could hear it. Agrees about what? I whispered. He looked up. Directly into my eyes. That you need help. The room spun. Help. That word again. The one his mother used. His sister repeated. He wrote in his documents. He said it so gently. So softly. So convincingly. I'm worried about you, he continued. You're overwhelmed, emotional, forgetful, and the stress is getting worse. Every accusation he'd written in those folders. He was now planting verbally. Daniel, I said quietly, I'm fine. He smiled sadly. I wish that were true. My stomach knotted painfully. He reached across the table and took my hand. Maria, I love you, that's why I'm doing this. Doing what? Slowly destroying me. Filing false petitions. Preparing to take my home. Planning to hospitalize me. What do you mean? I asked, voice barely steady. He squeezed my hand harder. I think you should talk to someone, professionally. There it was. The door, the entry point, the trap. If I agreed to see a therapist, he could twist anything I said. If I refused, he'd call it denial. He didn't want me healed. He wanted documentation, proof of instability. And the scariest part, he wasn't angry. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't emotional. He was calm. Dangerously calm. Like a surgeon preparing for an operation. That night I waited until he fell asleep. His steady breathing filled the room. His arm draped over the blanket. His face peaceful. It was strange looking at him like this. A man I once trusted with everything. Now a stranger plotting behind my back. I slipped out of bed quietly and left the room. I went to the living room, sat on the couch and buried my face in my hands. Who could I tell? Who would believe me? His family already thought I was unstable. Our friends liked him more than me. He was charming, successful, convincing. And I was quiet, introverted, not dramatic, not confrontational. He knew it. He relied on it. He used it. Suddenly my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We should talk before things get worse. My heartbeat stopped. Another message. I know what Daniel is doing. My mind raced. Who was this? What did they know? How much did they know? Then a third message. If you want proof, meet me tomorrow, 4 p.m. Crescent Park, bring nothing. I stared at the screen, frozen. A stranger knew. A stranger was involved. A stranger had proof. Was it someone from his work? His sister's neighbor? A therapist he had already contacted? Someone who overheard something? Or someone he planned to use and who changed sides. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. The next day I went to Crescent Park. I didn't bring my purse. I didn't bring my car keys. I didn't bring anything except my phone hidden in my jacket. The park was almost empty. Just a few people walking dogs, an old couple feeding ducks, a teenager on a bike. And then I saw her. A woman standing near a bench. Late 40s. Dark hair. Medical scrubs. A nurse. My throat tightened. She looked at me and gave a small nod. "You're Maria," she said softly. I nodded slowly. "You don't know me," she continued, "but I know Daniel." My stomach clenched. "Who are you?" I whispered. She took a deep breath. "My name is Laura. I work at the clinic Daniel recently visited." She paused. "He came in asking questions about involuntary psychiatric holds." My blood went ice cold. "He wanted to know," she continued, voice trembling, "how he could have his wife admitted without her consent." A sharp ringing filled my ears. "He told the doctor you were paranoid, unstable, possibly delusional. He showed him printed records of your episodes." My knees nearly buckled. "He asked," she whispered, "what would happen if he felt you were a danger to yourself." I covered my mouth as tears streamed down my face. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The doctor was concerned. He asked me to quietly investigate before he filed anything, so I did." She looked at me with sympathy and fear. "And Maria, it's worse than you think." I staggered back. "Worse? How could it be worse?" "He's building a legal foundation to take your home, your finances, your freedom." I couldn't breathe. "And if you don't act first?" She swallowed hard. "He will succeed." Her last words hit me like a knife. "He's planning to have you declared mentally unfit." The wind blew through the trees. The world kept moving. But inside me, something broke. Something ended. Something awakened. The fear was still there. But beneath it, a fire. A sharp, burning, unstoppable fire. He wanted to destroy me quietly. But now I wasn't afraid anymore. Now I knew exactly what he was capable of. And now I was going to stop him. I stood there in Crescent Park long after the nurse, Laura, walked away. Her footsteps disappeared. The wind carried her words into the cold air. But they stayed with me. "He's planning to have you declared mentally unfit." I repeated those words in my mind over and over, like a warning echoing in an empty room. I should have cried. I should have collapsed. I should have panicked. But instead, something inside me turned to steel. If Daniel thought he could destroy me with lies, manipulation, and legal tricks, he was about to learn exactly who he was dealing with. When I got home, Daniel was sitting on the couch with a blanket wrapped around him, TV playing softly. He turned toward me with a concerned expression. "There you are," he said gently. "I tried calling, you didn't pick up." Of course he tried calling. He wanted to know where I was, who I met, what I knew. I forced a smile, just like I had the night before. "Sorry, my phone died." He stood up and walked toward me. "You look tired." He touched my cheek lightly. "Let's go to bed early tonight, okay?" That touch used to comfort me. Now it made my skin crawl. "Sure," I said softly. But inside, my mind was racing. I needed a plan. A real plan. One that protected me legally, mentally, financially, everything he was targeting. I couldn't confront him. I couldn't run. I couldn't expose my knowledge yet. I needed to be silent. Invisible. Unpredictable. Because the moment he sensed resistance, he would strike. He slept easily that night. Too easily. His breathing was soft, steady, rhythmic. The breathing of a man who thinks he has everything under control. I watched him in the dark, studying the peaceful face of someone who was plotting to destroy my life. He looked innocent. That was the terrifying part. People like him always did. The next morning I left before he woke up. I told him I had an early errand. He didn't question it. He was too busy writing in that damn notebook each morning. I drove straight to Laura's clinic. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Come," she whispered, opening the staff entrance door. "We don't have long." She led me to a small counseling room, a beige, quiet space with soft lighting and a single window. She closed the blinds, locked the door, and sat across from me. "Maria," she said gently, "before anything else I need to ask, do you feel unsafe at home?" I paused. There were two kinds of danger. One where someone might hit you, and one where someone might erase you. With Daniel, the second was more terrifying. So I answered honestly. "I feel unsafe with what he's planning." Laura nodded, her eyes soft but serious. "Good, I needed to hear you say that, because what I'm about to show you is not something I'm supposed to share." She took out a tablet and typed something quickly. Then she turned the screen toward me. I gasped. It was Daniel's appointment record. He had gone to the clinic 3 times. 3. Not once. Not twice. 3. Each visit had notes. Patient expresses concern regarding spouse's mental instability. Reports episodes, paranoia, emotional volatility, confusion. Requests legal advice regarding involuntary psychiatric hold. Asks if spouse can be evaluated without her knowledge. My entire body went cold. "He fully intends to file it," Laura said quietly. "He was waiting for one more incident to justify it." Incident. Meaning, if I raised my voice, he would report it. If I cried, he would weaponize it. If I disagreed, he would call it delusional. If I defended myself, he'd say I was unstable. I swallowed hard. "What do?" I whispered. Laura leaned forward. "You need your own documentation. Before he files anything, you must build your own record." "My own record?" "Yes," she said. "You need a paper trail showing you are mentally stable, functional, responsible." She started listing steps. Visit a therapist voluntarily. Request a wellness evaluation. Get a written statement that you show no signs of instability. Consult a lawyer before he does. And most importantly, start recording everything. I stared at her. Record everything. That was the one thing Daniel didn't expect. He thought I was scared. Confused. Blind. He was wrong. When I left the clinic, I didn't go home. I went to the attorney Laura recommended. A woman named Ms. Carter, sharp eyes, calm voice, and the kind of presence that fills a room with quiet authority. I sat in her office, shaking, while she read through the notes I brought. She listened silently, patiently, professionally. When I finished, she set the papers down and folded her hands. "Maria," she said firmly, "your husband is attempting a structured psychological takedown." My breath hitched. "Yes," she continued, "this is a known pattern. It happens when someone wants total control over a spouse." She began outlining the steps Daniel was using. 1. Gaslighting. 2. Isolation. 3. Fabricated evidence. 4. Third-party validation. 5. Legal positioning. 6. Emergency petition. She looked me in the eyes. "By the time you realize what's happening, it's often too late." A chill ran down my spine. "But in your case," she said with a small but fierce smile, "he made a mistake." "Mistake?" I whispered. Ms. Carter nodded. "He underestimated you." We spent the next hour building MY protection. Heavy check mark, I signed a statement documenting everything he'd done. Heavy check mark, I scheduled a wellness evaluation. Heavy check mark, she filed a preliminary protective record. Heavy check mark, she drafted a legal notice preventing any petition without my presence. Heavy check mark, she advised me what to record. Heavy check mark, she told me what behaviors to avoid. Heavy check mark, she told me what to expect next. But the last thing she said sent a shiver down my spine. Maria, she said, leaning in slightly, men like Daniel do not back down when cornered. I swallowed. So what will he do? She answered without hesitating. He will escalate. I drove home slowly, gripping the wheel so tightly my fingers hurt. Every word from the clinic. Every word from the attorney. Every piece of evidence. It all pointed to one truth. I was no longer safe in my own home. When I walked through the front door, Daniel was in the kitchen again. He turned toward me with that same gentle smile. "Where were you?" he asked softly. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. I wasn't broken. I wasn't confused. I wasn't helpless. I smiled back calmly. "Oh," I said, setting down my bag, "just taking care of a few things." He kissed my cheek. "Good, I'm glad." But as he turned away, I saw it. A flicker. A slight tension in his shoulders. A tightening of his jaw. He knew something had changed. He didn't know what. He didn't know how. He didn't know why. But he felt it. The shift. The danger. The beginning of his unraveling. He didn't realize. The prey he thought he controlled had just become the hunter. From that day on, everything became a performance. Every smile. Every word. Every movement. Daniel watched me constantly now. Not obviously. Not aggressively. But carefully. Like someone waiting for a crack. I made sure there wasn't one. I cooked. I cleaned. I went to work. I laughed at his jokes. I thanked him for small things. And every single day I documented everything. Dates. Times. Words. Expressions. Silences. I recorded conversations when I could. I saved messages. I kept copies of everything in a secure folder he couldn't access. Because I knew one thing for certain. He was getting impatient. 3 days later, his mother came over. Unannounced. Of course. She stood in the doorway with that familiar look of concern, mixed with judgment. "Oh, Maria," she sighed dramatically, stepping inside. "Daniel says you've been under a lot of stress." I smiled politely. "Yes, work has been busy." She studied my face, searching for cracks. Finding none. She sat down slowly. "You know," she said softly, "sometimes women need help before things spiral." There it was. The same script. The same language. The same manipulation. I nodded calmly. "I agree." Her eyebrows twitched. She wasn't expecting agreement. "I've actually been seeing a professional," I continued casually, "voluntarily." Her breath caught. "Really?" she asked too quickly. "Yes," I said, "a therapist and a wellness evaluator." Daniel, who had been pretending to scroll on his phone, froze. The air shifted. His mother's smile faltered. "That's good," she said slowly. "Very good," I replied. "In fact, I received a written statement confirming I show no signs of instability." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Daniel looked up at me, eyes sharp now. "When did you do that?" he asked. I met his gaze evenly. I thought it was responsible. His jaw tightened. He knew. Something was slipping out of his control. That night he didn't sleep. I could feel it. He shifted constantly. Got up twice to check his phone. Went to the bathroom and stayed there too long. At 2:17 a.m. his phone buzzed. I pretended to sleep. He answered quietly and stepped into the hallway. But he made one mistake. He didn't close the door fully. She's acting calm, he whispered. A pause. No, too calm. Another pause. She says she saw a therapist already. His voice sharpened. That wasn't part of the plan. Plans. There it was again. My heart pounded, but I stayed still. I think we need to move faster, he said. A longer pause. No, she doesn't suspect anything, but I can't risk it. Risk what? Then he said the words that sealed his fate. I'll file tomorrow. My blood ran cold. Tomorrow. This was it. The escalation the lawyer warned me about. He was going to file the petition. Emergency evaluation. Removal from the homes. Everything. When he returned to bed, his breathing was shallow. Controlled. He thought he had the upper hand. He thought wrong. The next morning I woke before him. I sent 3 emails. One to my attorney. One to Laura at the clinic. One to my workplace HR department. Then I packed a small bag. Not to run. To prepare. When Daniel woke up, I was already dressed. Morning, he said, watching me carefully. You're up early. Busy day, I replied calmly. So am I, he said, forcing a smile. I nodded. I know. He blinked. Just once. He left an hour later. I followed him. Not secretly this time. Strategically. I went straight to my attorney's office. Ms. Carter was already waiting. Today, she asked. Yes, I said. He said he'll file today. She nodded. Then we move now. She made several calls. Fast. Efficient. Within an hour. Heavy check mark, a formal legal notice was filed blocking any emergency petition. Heavy check mark, a preemptive statement was submitted documenting attempted psychological coercion. Heavy check mark, my medical evaluation was officially logged. Heavy check mark, a cease and desist letter was drafted for Daniel. But the most important step. The trap. You need him to expose himself, Ms. Carter said. On record. How, I asked. She smiled slightly. By letting him think he's winning. That afternoon I went home and waited. At 4:42 p.m. Daniel walked in. His expression was calm. Too calm. How was your day, he asked. Productive, I said. He nodded. So was mine. My heart pounded. He sat across from me and folded his hands. Maria, he said gently, I think we need to talk. There it was. The moment he'd been building toward. He leaned forward. I made an appointment for you tomorrow. I didn't react. With a psychiatrist, he continued, just an evaluation. I looked at him calmly. And if I say no? His voice hardened just a little. Then I'll have to take steps to protect you. Protect me. I took a slow breath. Steps like what? I asked softly. He hesitated. Just for a second. Then he said it. On record. I'll file an emergency mental health petition. Got you. I pulled out my phones. The red recording light was already on. Daniel froze. What are you doing? He asked sharply. Recording, I said calmly, for my attorney. His face drained of color. You can't. I can, I said, and you just admitted everything. He stood up abruptly. You're twisting my words. No, I replied quietly, you did that all by yourself. He stared at me, breathing hard. For the first time. He looked afraid. Really afraid. Because now he knew. The game had changed. And he was no longer in control. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Daniel stood there, frozen, staring at my phone like it was a weapon pointed directly at his chest. Because it was. The silence felt heavy, thick with everything he had done, every lie, every manipulation, every quiet plan to erase me. "Turn that off," he said finally, his voice tight. "No," I replied calmly. He took a step toward me. I didn't move. "You're overreacting," he snapped. "You're twisting everything again." I almost smiled. There it was. His favorite word. Overreacting. I held his gaze steadily. "You just threatened to have me forcibly evaluated and removed from my own home, on recording, in your own words." He swallowed hard. "That's not what I meant. But that's what you said." His hands clenched into fists. "You think this proves something," he scoffed. "No one will believe you." I nodded slowly. "They already do." That was the moment his confidence cracked. "What?" he asked sharply. I walked past him, opened my bag, and placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of everything. My voluntary mental health evaluation, the therapist's written statement, the attorney's filings, Laura's clinic documentation, dates, times, records, and the audio file already backed up and sent. His face went pale as he flipped through the pages. "You went behind my back," he whispered. "No," I said evenly, "I went ahead of you." But for the first time since all of this began, Daniel looked small. Cornered. Exposed. "This isn't over," he said weakly. "I can still." "You can't," I interrupted. I opened my phone and showed him the email confirmation. Protective legal notice accepted. Emergency petition blocked. Any further attempt will be considered harassment and coercion. He stared at the screen. Then at me. Then back at the screen. His shoulders slumped. "You ruined everything," he muttered. I shook my head. "No, you did." That night Daniel didn't sleep in our bed. He packed a bag and left before dawn without another word. No dramatic fight. No apology. No explanation. Just a man walking away after his lies collapsed under their own weight. The weeks that followed were quiet. Peaceful. But not easy. Daniel tried to spin the story at first, telling people I was unstable, that I had misunderstood his concern. But facts don't bend to lies. And evidence speaks louder than charm. When my attorney sent a formal cease and desist, when his clinic flagged his behavior, when people began asking questions he couldn't answer, the narrative changed. Quickly, Daniel stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped pretending. He filed for divorce soon after. I signed without hesitation. No tears, no begging, no fear, just relief. Months later, I sat alone in my living room, the same living room he once tried to take from me. Sunlight poured through the windows. The house was quiet, safe, mine. I made tea, sat by the window, and thought about how close I came to losing everything, not because I was weak, but because someone I trusted tried to destroy me quietly. That's how it usually happens. Not with fists, not with shouting, but with whispers, notes, documents, concerned looks, and lies wrapped in care. I almost believed him, almost doubted myself, almost stayed silent. But I didn't. And that made all the difference. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, if someone keeps telling you you're too emotional, too sensitive, imagining things, listen to your instinct. Silence is what people like that count on. And truth. Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be recorded. I didn't lose my home. I didn't lose my mind. I didn't lose myself. I lost a man who never loved me the way I deserved. And that was the real victory. Sometimes you don't survive by fighting louder. You survive by seeing clearly and acting quietly.